the council website. So once again, I welcome everybody here, and I once I get back to the agenda, can I ask if there's any apologies for absence other than Caroline? Sorry.
All right, well, let you know.
No, that's the only apology, Chair, Councillor Convery.
Thank you. Is there any declarations of interest?
No.
No, I'll take silence as being assent. Move on to Chair's report. Can I say right just at the start once again that the Chair's report is just to confirm the elected members who are not members of this committee have been given the opportunity to observe the next item on the agenda, which is the presentation of the Council's new internet website, if they wish. Although they will not be participating in any discussions we have today, I thought it might be considered helpful. Another option is to view the footage of the meeting later on the Council's YouTube channel. Can I introduce, before we go on to the first item on the agenda, can I introduce the officers attending the meeting? We have Graham Smith, the Communications Manager, Bill Lennox, Digital Customer Experience Manager, Phil Dawes, Head of Environment Strategic Services, Margaret McCross, Head of Accounts, Chief Financial Officer, Linda Hutchison, Clerk to Committee, Warren Fraser, the External Audit, and Ron Leach, the Minute Taker. Thank you. Now can we move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is East Renfrewshire Council new website and presentation by the Communications Manager. I don't know whether it's Bill Lennox or Graham is going to do the introductions.
Hello, Chairs. Graham here. I'll do a short introduction and then hand over to Bill. So thanks very much, Chair, for giving us the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Council's new website. I just wanted to put into context and give some history to the project. Around 3.5 years ago, the decision was taken to form a digital customer experience team within the CCS department. This was to improve the digital offering to customers as more and more customers were requesting services that could be carried out digitally and forms that could be filled out on an online basis. And we were also aware that our website was a rather out-of-date affair and needed to be vastly improved. So this involved setting up a project team from scratch. This included members of the communications team who report into myself, members of Customer First who report into Sarah Jane Hayes, and also members of our ICT department to assist with technical support. There was a wide-ranging review of the website, which involved bringing the content up to scratch, making it consistent and more readable, because until that point it had been somewhat of a free-for-all in terms of people being able to contribute to the website. And then we undertook a major procurement exercise to source and supply a newly designed website. Despite the pressures of COVID and the lockdown, which began last March, all of the digital customer experience team were able to continue their work more or less uninterrupted. And I'm pleased to report that the Council's new website went live on July the 7th last year. Despite the challenges of COVID, the website was launched as planned and without any interruptions to our online services that we offer to customers and residents. The modern design of the website was largely welcomed, and the improved functionality has received positive feedback not only from many of our residents but also from wider industry commentators. It's very much an ongoing project though, although obviously the launch of the new website was a very key milestone, but the work continues at a pace to improve the type of offering which is available on it and to increase the number of council processes which can be conducted online. The Digital Customer Experience Manager joins me this afternoon, Bill Lennox. So without further ado, I'll just hand over to him, and Bill's going to show you some of the aspects of the new website, which has greatly improved our customer service. And either of us are obviously happy to answer any questions which members have after Bill has concluded his demonstration. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Graham. So I'll just go straight into sharing my screen and share with you starting with the legacy website. Everyone able to see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Done.
So,
Next.
everyone okay?
Yeah, very professional.
So this is the legacy council website, which everyone will be all too familiar with. So as you can see, the main issues that we had with it not only being a bit out of date, but it's very text heavy. It's very difficult to navigate as well for customers who are landing on the homepage. So we took these issues and we've moved forward with those. From a technical standpoint, the website was not considered mobile friendly, so it wasn't designed with a mobile first approach, which means that when you're viewing this on a mobile screen, it doesn't scale properly, so it's much more difficult to navigate, which is obviously a big issue at the minute, because we know that about 2/3 of people do actually access the website from a mobile device. So it was really important that it was designed moving forward with a mobile first approach. The other main technical issue is that we did not meet the newest accessibility standards. Now these are very new, and they were actually only sort of brought into law this year, or 2020, sorry, but that was something that we really had to consider with the design of the new website. So as part of the design process, we met with reps from each department within the council. We looked at various existing council websites. We looked at what aspects of those we liked, what aspects we didn't, and we looked also at commercial websites, because one thing we know is that residents really view any website as the same. You know, they don't want to see something different just because it's a local authority website. They want to feel as though they're using something that's as professional as Apple or Amazon or Google or any other commercial website. So now I'll show you the new website. First thing you'll notice straight away is the big alert bar at the top. Obviously, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, so that's there just to direct people as soon as they come on that we do have support and changes made to services due to COVID-19. This can be changed. It will be removed when it's no longer felt that that needs to be brought to people's attention. So the actual main homepage starts about here. The first thing you noticed is it's much more aesthetically pleasing. Obviously there's a lot of greenery, a lot of trees that you can see. You can see an East End Park in the background here. And that was really an aspect that was brought up at the design workshops. People felt that really showcasing that aspect of East Wren was important as part of the branding. The homepage itself is completely user-centered with the design. So we've taken analytics, and these main boxes here, those are actually the pages that residents want to access at any given time most. So obviously at the minute you'll see winter roads is here. So if I click on that, it takes me straight into, allows me to report whether there's an issue with ice somewhere, shows me the gritting routes, and gives me some advice on how I can clear ice and snow myself. In a few months' time, that will no longer be one. Hopefully, that will no longer be one of the pages that people most want to find. So that will be replaced with something else. Scrolling down a bit further, we can see that we've now got links to all departments within the council. These icons were designed in-house, so they're custom icons designed by East Renfrewshire graphic designers, and have really been a big hit. The other thing to mention here in terms of this web page is that it's entirely responsive to mobile devices. So if I'm viewing this on a phone, if I'm viewing it on a tablet, as most people do these days, everything is scaled absolutely perfectly. It works, everything works, all the buttons work. There's no wraparound text that we would see in the old website, and it just looks really professional, whether you're looking at it on a mobile device or not. We also have brought in all the accessibility features that are required to adhere to the newest standards. We did actually get a sort of surprise audit by the Cabinet Office a few weeks ago, and from speaking to colleagues at other councils, we were, as far as I know, the best council in terms of what the Cabinet Office had raised. There's always going to be issues with accessibility. You can't fix everything, but what we strive for is to have it as accessible as possible. And from what I'm hearing from the Cabinet Office and from colleagues in other local authorities, that we really are now sector leading in terms of being accessible online. As part of that, also the entire website, in particular the new forms, were designed using government digital services standards. So again, it's taking that GovUK approach and applying that to the East Renfrewshire website. Looking at the content, so I'll just fire straight into one page. You'll see that it is much more readable. The pages are much shorter. When people are online, they want to be able to get to where they need to go as quickly as possible and then read as much as possible and just get to the information. So as part of the content transformation, we actually removed about 60% of the pages that were on the existing website. It was over 1,000 articles that were removed, and that was because they were either out of date or they just weren't relevant. And again, it's about just cutting down on what people are landing on that they don't actually need to see. All other pages were entirely rewritten, so they've been rewritten by the new digital content officer, who is an expert in writing copy for the web. So it's written to be very easily understandable and to be easy to read and to understand on any device. Believe it or not, there's a difference in being able to read something on a mobile as opposed to on paper or on a computer. So that's even been taken into account. The other thing that is quite important in terms of how people are accessing it, we know that about 90% of people who land on a page, they actually get there from Google or they get there from another search engine. They don't usually go to the East Renfrewshire homepage and then navigate from there. So what we've done is we've renamed all the pages to make them very easily understandable. In the old website, what you would see is the address in the address bar would be a string of characters or a string of numbers. So what we've did is we've renamed every article to have what's known as a friendly URL, and that just makes things much easier to land on when you're searching from a search engine. Some of the new features that we've got on the website, one of the things that will really excite you if you're a techie person is that we have a dynamic search facility. So if I compare to the old website and I'm wanting to search for bin days, I'll search, hit enter, and then get a list of hits. I'll be able to find when's my bin emptied. In the new website, as soon as I start typing, it actually dynamically will show me what it thinks I'm looking for. And I can select from the list there. And that's something that might not seem super exciting to a lot of people, but from a usability standpoint, it's actually a massive thing, in particular when you're searching for something that you might not know exactly what it's called within the council or something like that. Another new facility that we have is the dedicated subsites. So COVID-19 obviously is the biggest thing happening at the minute. So what we've got now is we've got a dedicated site. So this is entirely separate, but is still within the East Ren website framework. What that means is that we can have something that is as big as COVID-19, which has obviously impacted every department in terms of the services they provide. We can have all that content in one place. It can still fit within the East Ren web branding, but it can look slightly different just to make sure that it's distinguished as something that is sitting somewhat separately. And moving forward, we do have plans for further subsites. Actually, one should be going live next week for the work strain work that we do. Another new feature that we've got is I'll just get back to the home page. One of the main things that people are looking for when they come online, and you'll see that it's up here in the data driven, is bid for a council house. And one thing that people really were giving us feedback on is that it felt too stuffy when they were searching for houses on a council website. So what we've done is actually created something that feels a bit like Rightmove or a bit like Zoopla or some other commercial house search website. So as you can see, we've got featured properties. People can search based on location. They can search based on number of bedrooms. And that's something that very few councils can offer at the minute. Again, this is something that we have really led on. And the feedback we've had has been tremendous. And it's something that I believe in a few years' time, every council will try to emulate what we've done here. Another new facility we've got is this new search feature for papers, reports and minutes. Obviously, we hold papers for many years, and searching through those can be very difficult for residents. So we've created this new search feature. It can filter on various aspects. It can search based on the year, the month, the type, and of course, which committee it relates to. The other main aspect of the website is, of course, the online forms, and we are currently working through those at the minute. So we're redesigning all forms that are currently on the website, and we're doing that based on the GDS principles that I mentioned earlier. We've currently got 19 that have been converted into the new format, and we're actively working on 6 at the minute. We're speeding up in terms of what we're able to do with those, and the aim is we do have a roadmap, and the aim is to get all existing online forms converted into the new format as quickly as possible, and then start on the improvement of existing processes that are not currently online. And that is pretty much the new website. I would recommend anyone who is interested to go online, have a look, and of course send any feedback to myself or Graham, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have just now.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Can I see the first person with their hand up was Annette. So can go to Annette to ask your question, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks a lot for that presentation. I just had a couple of questions, Bill, regarding planning and searching for minutes. I noticed, and I did it. I searched as we were doing through Google. If I search up East Renfrewshire planning search, it's quite good. It comes up as the second heading, and that works really, really well. If I'm going from the main page and I'm going through the dynamic search, when I put in planning, I'm not given the option as a drop down there to do planning search. And I think a lot of people are coming on and that's what they're wanting to find, is search up that planning application. It would be great if that popped up there. Yeah. That would be a big help, because when I just put in planning and I'm not given the option, so I then press return. I'm not coming across planning search until page 3. That should come up a lot further up. If there's anything that could be done around that, that would be really, really helpful. But it works on Google, works very well on Google. It's just the dynamic search.
So within the web page itself, we do know that's an issue that we're currently working on at the minute, and that's due to the fact that there's so many PDFs on the site at the minute related to planning So we're basically working on a way at the minute to exclude the PDFs from that, and that will then solve that problem. And that's something that we are working on at the minute.
That could be pushed up further up. That's fantastic to hear, because it's I had noticed that previously as well. Also with regard to, it was again with the dynamic search, and it's probably exactly the same thing then that's causing this. It's when looking for minutes, I don't get many options. It doesn't go back very far. So say I went audit and scrutiny, I got as far, I type audit, but it only gives me a couple of minutes from last year. So I just wondered if anything was being done around that.
Again, so that's 2 points that we've got there. So again, it's the issue with the PDFs that we hope to have resolved very soon. Excuse me. And we actually have only populated so far back to 2017. It's a bit of a manual task to upload all the minutes. And that's something that myself and Graham will be taking forward in the next week or two to start the population previously to 2017.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Maybe it's because the planning committee and the audit and scrutiny committee have both got dodgy chairmen. Barbara, can move on to Barbara's question.
Yes, it's just I'm looking at the design and all that's fine. And when you're highlighting a particular issue, the print is very good. But when it's the general narrative, I'm finding actually reading the print pretty useless. I can't make it out. So what I want to ask is it my eyesight that can't cope with it, or is there a better way of printing just the general narrative? Not the highlight bits are fine, but the general waffle is not clear. It's certainly not clear to me, but maybe it's my eyesight, but I couldn't read most of that.
Yep, so we do have built-in accessibility features within the website. So one of the things that you can do on the website is you can hold the control button and press the plus sign, and that'll actually zoom in the text and just make it that bit bigger.
Well, can it not be printed in a better print in the first place without having to faff around to get some other way of looking at it? As I say, the issues of highlighting something are fine. The general print is not fine, and there must be a better way of putting the general print.
Is this the text with the white background that you're referring to, Councillor Grant?
No, I'm not referring to the white background. I'm referring to the fact that the print is just not, for me, it's not very visible. Before
Bill or Graham comes in, can I remind you what was said earlier on, though, that a lot of this is to be tried to get mobile friendly. So the print has got to be small enough to get into mobile. Sorry, Bill, Graham, whatever. I think I'm not knowing to steal your thunder, but
yeah. So the print itself, so the font has been selected as being as accessible as possible. So the font itself and the color ratio should make it as readable as it can be. But I'm happy to go back to our accessibility partners and see whether they've had that feedback before. We've not had any feedback on the readability of it, but it's certainly something that I'd be happy to look into for you.
Well, I'd appreciate that, Bill. I would. Thank you.
I mean, it should be said that the accessibility standards which we're adhering to, and which Bill mentioned earlier, because we have relatively recently launched a new website, should be as up to date and as kind of state of the art as possible. But certainly, as part of those accessibility rules, people with viewing problems and eyesight difficulties, that is one of the key things which it tries to seek to address. And as Bill mentioned, it's not something that we've had a lot of feedback from, but we can certainly, as Bill mentioned, go and speak to our partners again on that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. Jim.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say I think it's an immeasurable improvement over the old website. Well done, guys. Looks much easier to navigate, and that was my biggest previous quibble with the website. It was very difficult to find anything because there were so many potential routes through. So well done is all I really wanted to say. I think you've done a grand job.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks. We'll feed that back to you, team. Thank you.
Much as I'd like to take Caroline's question, unfortunately, I've been told that I can only take questions from members of the committee, and the rest are only there to view. Is there any further questions from the committee members? No? Okay. We shall now move on to item 4 on the agenda, sorry, item 5 on the agenda, which is the new build development programme. To set in a context, in September the committee received a report on affordable housing from the Head of Environment Strategic Services, linked to the publication of the National External Audit report on the issue. It referred to the progress towards the Scottish Government's affordable housing supply target and the impact it had compared to the council performance in the national picture, and considered what more the Scottish Government and councils need to do to support continued increase in affordable housing. As well as noting that report, the committee agreed that a further report from the Housing Service should be provided on the challenges involved in delivering social housing, and this has been considered today, and we have Phil Dawes there to speak on it. Phil, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stuart. Right, the challenges involved in building new social housing. The paper that went to the Council's Cabinet in November outlines what is proposed in East Renfrewshire over the next few years to build houses. But just to kind of outline in summary, when building houses, we need obviously land. We ideally need land in a place that we want it. We need clean land, and we need land that has been serviced. And I'll go through those 4 criteria one by one. Obviously, we need land. Sometimes we can build on land if we don't own it. If a private developer owns a piece of land and they're going to build, for example, 100 houses, we do have what is known as a affordable housing contribution of 25%. So we are entitled to get 25% of that, on which we can, if we choose, build council housing. However, one thing I would say, if we don't own the land, we are not in control of the timetable, i.e. if the developer owns a piece of land and they advise us they're going to be building on it in 3 years' time, then there's a change in the market conditions, and they say, well, instead of building on 3 years' time, we're going to build in 6 years' times. Obviously, we aren't in control of that, and we have to take the houses when they build them. The next thing is we need land where we want it. Now, the majority of the land we currently have that is easily available to build on is on the Leven Valley side of the authority. Our greatest demand for social housing is on the eastward side of the authority, where we have less land. That is frequently a challenge for us. The next issue I articulated was the need for clean land. We need land that has not been contaminated, or if we have contaminated land, then the cost of building on that are considerably more expensive. So we are looking at a piece of land at the moment, and we potentially will have to incur costs of a couple of £100,000 to deal with the contamination, which obviously increase the cost of building on the housing and isn't reflected in the subsidy. And I'll touch upon subsidy in a moment. The 4th criteria I outlined was we need to have service land. There needs to be supplies from Scottish Water, from Scottish Power. There needs to be a road infrastructure that can support that land. If I was to use as an example, we have a piece of land on Barhead Road in Newton Mans. In order for us to build on that piece of land, the first thing we need to do is to put in place a signalised junction to improve town centre pedestrian movement. That is likely to cost a couple of £100,000. So in addition to the cost of building the housing, there's the cost of putting in place the infrastructure. From a council perspective, each time we build a house, we will receive a standard subsidy of £59,000. Now, there are circumstances, for example, if there is contamination or it's a particularly challenging site to develop, we could be eligible for additional funding, but that doesn't always cover the extra costs. And that subsidy of £59,000 is a subsidy regardless of the size of house that we build. So if we were to build houses instead of flats, houses tend to be more expensive because their footprint is larger. Because obviously on a site, you might be able to place 12 flats, only get 6 houses. So the unit cost is more expensive for a house than for a flat, but the subsidy rate is the same. And obviously many people's aspiration is to have a house and not a flat. Similarly, if we need to build an adapted property, if a person has a disability and we require to put in place adaptations, there is no additional subsidy available there, and such houses can be more expensive to build. A third issue, particularly given the climate change issues that we face at the moment, energy efficiency housing can be more expensive to build. So when we were looking at the potential site at Barhead Road in Newton Mearns, and we was looking at a concept called Passive House, which is a more energy efficient housing concept, it is much more expensive to build. As I said, we receive a subsidy of £59,000 per unit. We can, on occasion, receive a little more, and for one of our recent developments, I think it was Fenwick Drive, we did manage to obtain from the Scottish Government additional subsidy. I think in that occasion it was increased to £72,000 per unit to deal with abnormal costs associated with the utilities and some retaining walls. But normally, all of the additional costs that we face, not all of those additional costs are covered by the extra subsidy. Any money that we borrow to build council housing, we obviously need to pay back. That the primary means we have to pay that back is through the rents, and we need to get that balance to ensure that rents remain affordable and are not too high. Hopefully that summarises very quickly some of the challenges involved in delivering council housing. I'm obviously happy to take any questions because I appreciate I've very quickly run through that.
Thanks very much, Phil. Before I open it to questions, the one thing I would like to ask is why is it we get 59,000 or went up to 72 for Fenwick Drive? Yeah, it was roughly about 20,000 less than housing associations.
It is an historic issue. I believe the rationale originally was that because local authorities can access loans via the Public Works Loan Board, it was felt that local authorities had access to cheaper finance and therefore required less of a subsidy. I'm not aware of any empirical investigation that has been undertaken recently to substantiate that. And I do know that conversations are ongoing with COSLA and the Scottish Government, and COSLA are lobbying the Scottish Government to see the subsidy arrangements changed so they are more favourable to local authorities.
Hopefully the local authorities will get a wee bit extra rather than housing associations will get a bit less. But that's for another day.
Does that answer your question, Councillor?
Yeah, surely.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, could I just pick up on a few points, Phil, if I may? I'm delighted to see that at long last Barhead is now in the equation and something's happening since I mentioned it to you about 3 years ago. And there was all sorts of things we were told, oh no, we can't do that, we can't do that. But anyway, I did say at the time, if somebody wants to do it, they'll find a way, and I'm glad we've found a way to use that site. So that's good news. I'm pleased about that. A couple of things I'd like to mention. The money that we get as a subsidy, do we get that paid after the houses are built? Do we get it paid before the houses are built? And as Stuart has mentioned, why are we the poor relations? Well, we got an explanation, but that's really not good enough. Surely nowadays we have to make energy efficiency part of the whole project. It's not just an add-on, it's got to be part of the whole business. So I really feel that we should be banging on about that to the administration in Edinburgh, who are good at giving orders, but not so good at coming up with the readies. And just while my mouth's warm, I'm just going to mention something that I heard on the radio, and I was listening to the World Service at 4 o'clock in the morning about social housing that's been dealt with in Vienna. And I don't know if you've ever read a paper recently about the social housing that they're providing in Vienna, which seems to be an A1 project. So if you've got any time, maybe you could go on and see online, presumably, what it is that they're doing in Vienna that they're getting such plaudits for. It might be something we could pick up on as we travel along this bumpy road. Thank you, Phil.
I thought for a minute you were going to say if I had any time I could go to Vienna and look at it.
No, I'm going first.
Right, well, I'll go with you.
Anytime soon.
In relation to the grant payments, we don't receive it up front. It is paid in arrears, although if a project is quite lengthy, we can receive partial payments. So it's not as if we get the whole payment at the very end. We can get part payments partway through a project. I certainly would agree that I would like to see the subsidy arrangements reviewed, not just to achieve parity between housing associations and local authorities, but also to reflect additional costs that may be incurred as a result of, as I say, contamination or the need to service land, but also to deal with the issue of energy efficiency. Sometimes it can cost up to £10,000 more per unit to build an energy efficient home. Now, clearly, if an energy efficiency home is built, then the person's fuel bills will be reduced. But we don't just want to tackle often fuel poverty, we need to tackle poverty full stop. We need to ensure the rents are affordable, and the Scottish Government is very keen and are keeping a close eye on the rents that social landlords charge. So our capacity to simply borrow more money and to place the cost of that borrowing on the rents is limited, both in terms of individuals' capacity to pay and the role that the Scottish Government plays in regulating the level of rents.
Phil, if I could just come back to you on that. I mean, energy efficiency is not an add-on for anybody anymore. This is basic stuff that we're trying, and every country should be looking at the energy efficiency because it's very much part and parcel of our world these days. So I don't see why we should be penalized almost because we're trying to put energy efficiency into new build. It's very much, I would have thought, a priority.
Well, as I say, COSLA are having those ongoing conversations with the Scottish Government, and COSLA are being supported by a range of organisations such as the Association of Local Authority Chief Housing Officers, who are providing COSLA with the necessary information which will hopefully enable them to lobby the Scottish Government effectively.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Anybody else got any questions? Annette?
Yeah, it was just really to add on to what's already been said, but it was just to ask with regard to the level of funding that you mentioned and the discussions that COSLA are having around that additional cost that you've also just mentioned to make those homes more energy efficient. Do you have a timeline about when you would expect to hear back on that?
No, no, in short.
Okay, so thank you.
I could elaborate, but the bottom answer is that the bottom line is no, I'm not sure.
Okay, thanks.
Just to say, these are conversations that have been ongoing for a couple of years. I think the intensity of the conversations is beginning to ramp up. So hopefully the answer will be sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Councillor Swift.
Thank you, Chair. Hiya, Phil. Welcome.
Hello.
I've got a couple of questions.
I can hear a nasty one coming.
That's not nasty at all. Mr. Dawes does a tremendously good job. So do his team. Now, does our rent could we potentially vary the rent based on the energy efficiency of the home? Is the first question.
There is no legal impediment to prevent us doing that, so we could if we chose to.
It strikes me if we're going to spend £10,000 more on a home and people's energy bills are going to go down, it would not be unreasonable to charge a little bit more for the rent. That's one of my questions. The second question, or conversely, if somebody's moving into a cold, drafty house that radiates heat everywhere, you know, we should be reducing the rent relatively. So it's not necessarily about putting rents up. It should be putting rents up and putting rents down to reflect the burden on them as a householder. That's one thing that strikes me. The other thing that I was going to ask is, I mean, you talked about the cost of capital, etc., for affordable housing and in general, and that councils obviously have access to lower capital costs, and that is true. The question I would ask is is that what drives the disparity in rents, or is it I won't ask the other bit. Is that what primarily drives the disparity in rents between, you know, housing associations and councils? Because council rents tend to be quite a bit lower than other registered social landlords like housing associations.
Okay, so 3 questions there. The first one, I think I've answered. There is no legal impediment for us to have a rent policy that said if a person lived in a more energy efficiency home, they would be required to pay a higher rent. Related to that, the second question, in terms of people in homes that are currently not energy efficient, the Scottish Government a number of years ago released a new target called EISH, Energy Efficiency in Scottish Homes, and all social housing stock, both local authority and housing association, was required and is required to meet a certain standard. Most homes have met that through a combination of new windows, new central heating systems, roof and render, insulation, etc. So the bulk of our homes, unless they are of a particular construction type, should now be energy efficient. In terms of the disparity in rents between local authorities and housing associations, it is the case that on average, your housing association rents will be higher than local authority rents. I'm not sure there has been detailed analysis undertaken of why that is. The working assumption is that housing associations don't have access to such cheap finance, therefore incur higher loan costs, and these are passed on through their rents. However, given that they receive a higher subsidy, I don't know if they do have higher loan costs. I'm not saying that they don't, I'm saying I couldn't confirm one way or the other. So in short, I don't think a piece of academic research has been undertaken to comprehensively answer that question. Or if there is such a piece of research, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, one last question. Given that we're building new homes and we're building them in Barhead and we're building them or in the Levern Valley, and we're also building them on the Eastwood side, is there any site of any political will that you're aware of, Phil, to harmonise the rents between the different sides of East Renfrewshire? I mean, East Renfrewshire has been a thing since what, the mid-90s, and we're now, you know, more than 25 years on, and we haven't harmonised the rents. Is that something that is coming down the turnpike for the good people of Eastwood to get cheaper rents, or the?
Well, before I answer that question, what I would say is it's actually not the case that there is necessarily a disparity between the Levern Valley and the Eastwood in terms of one paying more and one paying less. There may be, but those disparities, depending on house type, house location, etc. It's not the case that there's a specific disparity between one side of the authority and the other. Rent harmonisation could be undertaken. It isn't on the immediate horizon. It does pose a number of logistical issues which have been looked at in the past. It was perhaps felt that that on occasion the cure was worse than the problem. However, it's obviously if the council wishes to look at that again, then it can do so.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
It absolutely does, Phil. Thank you.
Anybody else get any questions? The only thing I would like to suggest is, can I ask you, Phil, it's going to about rent harmonisation again. Is the new builds in Finnick Drives, for instance, are they going to be the same rents as the same type of houses in Eastwood?
Yes, there isn't an intention to have higher rents, for example, on the Eastwood side than the Leven Valley side. If I recall correctly, the rents for the new build are slightly higher than for our existing stock, to reflect in part the fact that the incoming tenant is getting a newer house with better amenities, but there isn't an intention at the moment to have a differential for new build between the Leven Valley side and the Eastwood side.
Now, the reason I ask is because if there is no disparity between one and the other, the rent harmonisation and over time will disappear. That was all. Anyone else? Any further questions? I don't see any hands up. So at that rate, we'll move on to the final item in the agenda, is the update on the Audit and Scrutiny Committee work plan, and there's a copy attached from Linda.
Okay, thank you, Chair. This report provides an update on the 2021 Audit and Scrutiny Committee work plan, which helps the committee schedule and prioritise its work over the course of each year. In June last year, the committee noted performance against its first annual work plan, which was for 2019-20, and approved the 2021 work plan to the extent it had been developed by then, as such plans are effectively live documents which can change throughout the course of the year as things are added to it. For example, as the report reflects, the COVID-19 emergency has impacted on aspects of the plan, such as when some of the meetings have taken place, and also when some matters have been and are to be considered by the committee. An updated version of the work plan referring to the progress thus far and some related matters is in Appendix 1. And that appendix includes a series of notes on various matters, including some issues that form part of the agenda for today's meeting, where things stand on matters the committee looked at in more depth and others it may look at in more depth in future, and some new issues the committee has considered since the original plan was put in place, such as the COVID-19 Scrutiny Guide for Audit and Scrutiny Committees, on which you received feedback in November. So what I'm inviting you to do today is to note and consider and discuss, if you want, the development on the performance against the 2021 work plan thus far, and agree that implementation and development of the plan continue, though we're obviously getting to the end of that period of time, and that a further report on performance against it, and also putting forward proposals for the 2021-22 work plan be submitted to a future meeting. I'm happy to take any questions or to discuss or clarify anything that's in the report.
Thank you, Linda. Does anyone have any questions or suggestions or proposals to put forward?
No.
Nothing at all?
That's it.
No wonder you're sitting back, Linda.
Thank you.
Okay, well, that brings us to the final item on the agenda, or the end of the final item. But there's one other small thing that I would like to say, that as I said at the start, the minute taker today was Ron Leach, and I'm told Ron that this will be his last meeting. He's retiring, obviously not before time. Ron, I've met Ron since I started in the council, and I'm told he's been there 90 years before that. He's always polite, despite some good-natured banter. always helpful. Certainly, from my point of view, I'll certainly miss him because we've always had a good rapport with Ron, and I wish him a long and healthy retirement.
Hear, hear.
Thank you.
All the best, Ron.
All the best. Thank you. And the same.
All the best, Ron.
All the best, Ron.
Good retirement, Ron.